Director of Mission Innovation Urban Transitions Mission, and it would be my pleasure, as you probably have guessed, to moderate the session of today. The Urban Transition Mission works with an ambitious and always growing cohort of 100 cities from 43 countries across the world. And these cities have embarked on a journey to implement local transitions to net zero, resilient, and inclusive future. Exactly what we are going to be discussing today. Together, we are working to empower this community to make sure that they can turn this vision of net zero and inclusive future a reality by building capacity, knowledge, but also brokering access to solutions. And a lot of the solutions that we are looking into are, of course, digital. When we started our journey together with our cohort, immediately they signaled to us that access to data, but also the ability to manage and to meaningfully use this data, as well as to develop sound scenarios for the transitions are still key challenges that they have to face. They also make it very clear that how digitalization is a key enabler that they would like to further investigate and that keeps help shaping the net zero, resilient and inclusive future based on robust data-driven policy and strategies. And indeed, cities across the world are harnessing the potential of digitalization. They are boosting the efficiency of their infrastructure. They are optimizing resource management. They are reducing emission and enhancing the effectiveness of an increasing amount of complex and interconnected services in a broad range of domains, including healthcare, transportation, power, and utilities, as well as residential services. So ultimately, they are working to really improve quality of life. So monitoring systems, modeling scenarios, but also new tools like digital twins are increasingly explored by our cities across the world as an essential instrument to strengthen their local climate action. From expanding the smart grids and matching variable energy supply and demand to supporting the deployment of effective early warning systems and first response operation, digital solutions and artificial intelligence have an essential role to play. Digital solution can also accelerate inclusiveness, and we will be hearing about that today. Services like digital banking applications have helped revolutionizing, for example, how individuals are acting with finance. They also help to better include marginalized communities and vulnerable communities, for example. The way that digital solutions are being applied to increasingly inform urban planning and policies and to support vulnerable communities is also another example. But there is always another side to the same metal. Artificial intelligence and digital solutions have an impact also on the environment. Storing, retrieving data, computing with data in increasingly large data centers has an impact on both the energy consumption, the water consumption, and therefore the overall vision and strategy of the city. So this digital transformation, in addition, also opens up community to additional risks, including cybersecurity, privacy concerns of our citizens that could fundamentally change the existence and affect our smart cities to the very core. So with all of this in mind, today we will be focusing our discussion on understanding better what constitutes a smart, but also a wise city, because we want to talk about that too, in the context of net zero transition. We want to talk about the role of digitalization to help us unlock the resources, but also the capacity for cities to prioritize, to select, to accelerate the implementation of informed policy making that leaves no one behind. And we want to discuss also what are the cutting-edge solutions that are available out there to support these communities on this very ambitious journey. So to answer all of these questions, and probably many more of them, and to really understand what is the power that digitalization can bring to the vision of cities that want to become net zero, inclusive, and resilient as soon as possible, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you a fantastic panel of speakers, and I would like to welcome them one by one on stage. So first, I would like to welcome Ms. Arvea Marieni. She is a European Climate Pact Ambassador and Director of Ecological Transition at BM-Cube. Thank you for being with us, Arvea. I would like to welcome on stage Mr. Mauricio Alcantara, Director and Co-founder of Instituto Regenera. Thank you for being with us, Mauricio. And then, but last but by no means the least, It's my great pleasure to introduce Ms. Nina Kolibashkina, Senior Social Development Specialist at the Climate Investment Funds. So thank you very much for being with you, and if you allow me, I will join you on the comfy chair now. Hello, colleagues, and thank you very much once again for joining this important discussion this afternoon. To kind of get a bit of a sense of what we are discussing today and the role that digitalization can really play in this holistic transition that we are talking about, maybe I'd like to have a bit of a conversation with you on what do you think really a smart and a wise city, what makes a city a smart and a wise one, what constitutes it, and how do you feel that cities can really leverage digital technologies to make sure that they can achieve the climate goals while also not forgetting about this holistic transition that needs to be implemented. And maybe I'm going to be disruptive. Mauricio, can I start with you with that question? Would that be okay? We always say ladies first. I want to be disruptive today.
Okay, let's go. Well, I think when we're thinking about a smart city and in the terms of technology, I think there's something, especially when we're in a conference like this, that we have people from all around the world thinking about solutions to mitigate and to adapt to the climate change. I think the most important thing is to think of solutions that can be suitable for different environments. You know, when you're thinking about big cities, there are specific challenges. When we're talking about small cities, we have other challenges. When we're thinking about cities from the global north or the global south, we have different perspectives, but yet we have different contexts, but also we have similar challenges. So when we're thinking about technology, I think it's really important for us. It's really important for us to think of shared solutions that can not only be how can I say replicated to different situations, but also that can be enhanced locally, that can be adapted locally, because overall making like a library or a collection of different solutions that can be suitable for different places, like shared solutions that are not only suitable for one specific place or just for one specific situation, but also can be like it's kind of old-fashioned now, but like open source solutions. Open source solutions that not only are accessible anywhere, but also that can be that any context can add more solutions, more ideas, on more that can make it like a bigger like a technology. How can I say? A community around the solutions that we are implementing.
Well, thank you very much for that and for highlighting the importance really of also having this view to always connect to the context and making sure that we have a wide range of different lessons learned that we can take. And you were talking about open source solutions, and I would say the Climate Pact is somehow a great repository, right, of open source solution. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Arvea, can I ask the same question to you as well? What does constitute a smart and wise city, and what is the role of innovation? And I understand that we have a beautiful video to play while you are.
First of all, thank you very much. The Climate Pact is an initiative of the Director General for Climate Action, and this is an engagement, a citizens' engagement program to address and tackle the problems together with cities, with regions. Because words are less powerful than images, here my representation of what an intelligent, smart, wise and lean city is. We are a company which operates in this space, creating digital twins for built assets, cities, regions, districts and infrastructure. This is the problem setting, probably is better. We all know that the problem is around cities. Cities are responsible for 40% of aggregated GHG emissions and are also a place for solutions. And nowadays in Europe, we are addressing a gap in productivity that can be solved by accelerating the digitalization using green innovation. And that's exactly what we do. This is one of our results. We cut 35% GHG emissions on a construction site nearby Paris. We are the winners of the European Innovation Procurement Award that was awarded us in 2024. And cities, it was perfectly right, must be adaptive, must be localized, solutions must be personalized, and they must be lean. That means that you have to reuse the old instead of creating with new material. Cities are circular, so digital solutions are, for instance, able to accelerate the uptake of circular solutions with, for instance, digital passport, eco-design directive. This is one of the examples of what city modeling, and this is the functioning of our digital twins principle. The digital twins are not only a mirror of reality, that's only one element, but they operate in a full cycle and across the life cycle, complete life cycle, in order to not only replicate, but govern, because you analyze different scenarios. And that's very important where you're making decisions and also integrating the KPIs. One part of our innovation, and this is the technical element, we mainstreamed climate and environmental KPIs in the hierarchy, in the ontology, in the semantics of the digital twin. There is a real project which is coming. This is the one we won the European Innovation Procurement Award in 2024. This is the operation of the entire campus of the École Polytechnique, the campus of the largest polytechnical school in France, 250,000 square meters of building, which is corresponding to a small city of 250,000 people. We're actually taking it to cities now. Those are the principles, the methodologies are European, product environmental life, footprint. This is the full cycle principle. This is the site of the École Polytechnique. You will see very briefly how we operate on a unique data repository, and we operate on OpenBeam. So it is actually accessible. This is not exclusively for us. And addressing the security and cybersecurity issue and privacy, we are strategic partners of a company, which is a strategic company for the French government, also Dassault Systèmes, and we are the only providers of cyber-secure data spaces in Europe with exclusively European technologies. That means that if we are protecting our GDPR, our data, our resilience for infrastructure, we not only having necessarily data centers in Europe, that's the minimum, we also have to have technologies for managing the data centers that are neither American nor Chinese. This is Mario Draghi's concept, and that's why Mario Draghi was also there. From local to region, now our colleague was explaining that the applications are actually very versatile. You go from constructions, utilities, you do power, digital power intelligence. Shenzhen, the beautiful Chinese city, is operated nowadays by a virtual power plant. This is what we can do with application of several digital solutions. And by the way, Europeans in Internet of Industry 5.0 are still capable of competitiveness. We have lost 2 ways of digitalization. The last one was in the early year 2000, where the Ericsson and the Nokias were destroyed, or very much lagging behind. Nowadays, we got a chance to invest in these kind of solutions. And the last point, we need not forget in social elements, and that's why we partner with Homes for All. This is also a small impact investment company that I participate in with another investment in Italy, and I will talk about it maybe later.
Thank you so much, Arvia, for that. Please, let's give an applause to Arvia for the presentation. And I would like to invite back colleagues here. And we talked a little bit about how to use green digitalization in this video and your speech, Arvia, but also how you underlined what we can meaningfully do with these new technologies for the future, looking into always remembering what some of these challenges and around safety, security, could look like also. So this meaningful use of the technology, but also the great potential that it has. Sometimes, although we focus a lot on how we deliver on these specific tools and technologies and how they can potentially help us with our economic growth, our sustainable development, our goals and our vision, but how does this type of technology reflect on our citizens, on our communities? So maybe I'll go to you now, Nina. Again, my question to you is thinking about the people in particular and how we can also shape people-centered cities in the future. What does a smart, wise, and people-centered city look like?
Thank you so much for your question. Well, I think WISE has to be inclusive. That's part of the WISE definition. So I represent climate investment funds. It's one of the multilateral climate funds which receives bilateral finance to invest it in low and middle income developing countries to finance solutions both in adaptation and mitigation space. And within the scope of our work, we actually do deal a lot with cities. We were at some point developing a separate standalone program that didn't take off just yet, but definitely within our work on climate resilience. And we have passed a lot of very interesting experience through our pilot program on climate resilience. And we're now in the process of designing a new country resilience program, which looks at really a kind of comprehensive solutions. Because to look at green cities, there are, you need to start with policies, with investments, with projects, and then of course, all the way down to the communities and how it is implemented. We also just launched another program. It didn't occur to me until I heard the presentations, the linkage, but we've just a month ago at the Clean Energy Ministerial in Brazil, we launched our new industry decarbonization program. And I think it is very relevant to the work that you're describing, both looking at decarbonizing industries that produce materials for building cities, but also looking at decarbonizing transport. And we are now in the process of soliciting country applications for that. CIF works through a programmatic approach. So we deliver our programs through multilateral development banks, which allows us to work at a large scale and kind of bring the partners together through something that can be referred as country platforms. That's another buzzword in development right now, but we've been working through that model for the past 15 years, where we bring the several multilateral development banks that work in the country together with the national stakeholders to develop a plan how several different investment projects targeting different priorities, how they will come together to address that goal. And I think there are a lot of potential areas for complementarity. Also, when I was listening to colleagues and the first speaker, the concept of learning and knowledge exchange, I think that's a very important aspect as well. And we at CIF, although we are primarily finance facility, but we also pride ourselves in being a learning laboratory. So with experience working with over 80 countries around the world, we do a lot of knowledge facilitation, knowledge learning, capturing some best practices. And I think that is also bringing a lot of important power to the discussion. Within that work, we've also been generally within our investments, we have a very significant focus on inclusion. Tomorrow is the Gender Day at COP. There would be a lot of conversations. We've had our strategy consultation on social inclusion and gender equality today. Over the past 2 years, we've also been looking at disability inclusion. And I think this is a subject that maybe in the second round of comments we can go more in depth into some very specific concrete points. But I think, when we're starting to work towards greener, climate smart cities, if we want to be wise about it, developing various strategies to make sure that the citizens are consulted, and then when we think about citizens, we really unpack what it means. We don't consult with the usual suspects, with those for whom it is most easy to be involved both in economic activities and the political activities of the city, but we think about excluded groups. We identify which groups will be excluded, what would be the barriers to their inclusion, and we really actively engage them in the conversation on how the new designs should be addressing their very specific needs.
Thank you very much for that, Nina. And when I hear all of you talking, it seems like we always talk about thinking outside of the box, but somehow for this transition, it seems like we have to throw the box away completely and start instead revisiting the way that we are approaching these different transitions across the board. You mentioned the role that industry and materials have to play. So thinking cross-cutting, not just across sector, but also across areas of responsibilities of different stakeholders across the different levels. So thank you very much for that, and also for highlighting the importance of knowledge sharing. So we will continue that specific point on conversation. But talking about how we need to be a little bit more holistic, how we can look into urban transition that goes across sector and across value chains. Mauricio, I'll go back to you maybe. How do you think the digital solution can support this conversation, this transition across value chain, and how can city ensure that the digital technology are really supporting the core human needs that our citizens have on the ground?
Yeah, I will talk specifically about something that's literally that comes from the ground. That's the food that we have at cities. Generally, when we're talking about urbanization, it's really common that we don't have, with urbanization and with dense urbanization, we have lesser and lesser contact with the origins of what makes us alive. That's food. That's something that we always relied on to keep to be living as a species. But sometimes we have no clue from where does the tomato that we get from the grocery store, where it comes from. And at a first glance, it might have nothing to do with technology. But however, we're talking about technologies that enable the way the production or enable the way the food that arrives at our tables, how they come to us. We have distribution systems on food that date from decades ago, before the digital era, and they keep on running up to today, like centralized production and monopolized supply chains. And generally, we rely on long circuits, food that come from far away from the cities to come from they are gathered to us. That means that not only we have long, big emissions from transportation from that food that comes from wherever to our plates, but also that doesn't facilitate the life of local producers or even urban farmers. I want to give you an example. Belém, that's a city that's hosting next COP30. I worked there with agroecological producers from the region. And if you go to the main supermarket chain in the city, you can find strawberries that come from the south of Brazil. Belém, it's in the north of Brazil. And you can find cupuaçu, that's a local fruit that's delicious. Why that? Because we have a supply chain that's completely outdated. And, well, that has a lot of bad outcomes. For you to have an example, that city has 3 million people, and 80% of the food that arrives to the city comes from other Brazilian regions. Although there is there's a lot of great producers around. So technology can help us answering some questions like where does this food come from? How it's transported and stored, how it's distributed, how can we digitalize this supply chain, how can technology help us to understand what are the best ways to circulate that food within the cities. Like when you have short circuits, we can support local production, avoid transport emissions, reduce the needs for storage, and value local food culture instead of using generalized generic food that from elsewhere. And so when we tackle these problems, we can help governments to assure food and nutritional security for all. We can improve the livelihood of farmers and producers and stimulate the prioritization of sustainable production like agroecology. So when we think about technology, we can bring to the table to discussion things like how can we trace the production? How can we monitor the availability and the demands of different products, considering seasonality, considering the perishability of the foods, and even to inform consumers on the sources of this food, to enhance the transparency on how sustainable are the production practices and the positive outcomes of the environment and through the environment and the society on the way this food is produced. So for all of this, technology can be of really good help. Yet we can think about on how can we map the availability of food on the city to avoid what we call the food deserts, that are the places where there's no healthy food available, or even to avoid food, what we call the food swamps. That's only there are a big amount of bad foods available. So we can think on solutions. We can think of ways to trace that, because technology can help us to develop new ways of creating public or enhancing public policies on food and health and nutritional security, and it's really necessary for us to think about keep on building all the other, because to keep on building all the other solutions we're talking about, we need to have a healthy population. We need to have a healthy environment. And even that, when we're talking about agroecological food, or when we're talking about sustainable food, we're also talking about feeding the cities with food that sequester carbon from the atmosphere, instead of emitting carbon from the old style production methods. So through the feeding system of the cities, we can also help going towards net zero cities.
Thank you very much, Mauricio, for reminding us also how cities can be a space for testing out some of these different approaches and understanding these new life cycles that even, things like I mentioned before, core human needs. There is no more core human need than eating something, than having food. So I think it's essential to see how this is really bringing together not only an overarching objective to become more net zero, but also seeing how our daily life can truly contribute to that process while making us and keeping us more healthy and more conscious consumers as well. But we talk about food now, for example, we could talk about transportation, logistics, many of the other services that our cities are delivering, and that of course have an impact in the trajectory that they have for their own resilience and for their own decarbonization. So Arve, I'll go back to you. What do you think is the potential of digital technologies? You gave us some ideas already through your video, but what do you think is the potential of digital technologies in improving the resilience of specific systems, like the energy system, for example, optimizing efficiency, reducing waste? How does that really fit into the picture of what digital solutions can do for us?
Digital solutions are at the same time a threat and an opportunity. Measuring the trade-offs, and those trade-offs are basically limited by proper eco-design of the digital solution. That means we adopt, for instance, for our solutions, data frugality and digital sobriety as fundamental principles. That means reducing the use of data. We have, contrary to what the hype goes by, we have far many more data than necessary. What we need to do, even for artificial intelligence, we are an intelligent company. We operate on the frontier and even beyond the frontier of the technology. I invested in this company. That means that I do believe there is nothing similar, comparable, okay? Otherwise, I'm not Jeff Bezos. Don't put my money in it. I'm also a director, but so we utilize 8 times less, at least, data than other comparable solutions. How do we do that? By eco-designing. That means you have to, there is this idea that you have the data, you unleash an algorithm or artificial intelligence and they find something. No, the only thing that they find is replication the most of the times. So you need to pre-qualify the data because you have to have in mind the end use case. What is that you want to achieve? Once you design the pathway, the logical pathway, you give rules. And the number of, or the quantity of utilized data is very much reduced. When we apply this to BIM, Building Information Modeling, and digital twins, BIM is a sort of a technical layer, a first layer of a very much more complex thing, which is a digital twin. We don't do what everybody else seems to be considering a digital twin: virtualization, visualization, 3D. We only do it when strictly necessary. That is the same principle of eco-design for any production system. And that is what the legislation at the European Union level is starting integrating. You have to know what you use materials and resources or data for. Otherwise, you're just exposing consumption. Second point is those systems are holistic. Digital twins do spatial planning, including all, for instance, the elements is applied. For instance, we do have some collaborations for climate modeling along the coast with the University of Brest. We are in France, but it doesn't matter. And when you integrate the right KPIs, that's why I use climate, environmental footprint, which is a sort of product environmental footprint of integrated, very integrated, enhanced LCA, putting together resources, natural resources such as water. Because the economy, unlike what they tell you, is not about money. It's about energy flows and material flows. Money is an abstraction. What is real is what we use. Without soil, you don't do anything. Without water, you certainly don't produce oil. So when you account for the KPIs, and this is about climate transition plans or circular economy plans, reporting directives, you have a benchmark of what you currently use in the system, and you module and schedule what sort of efficiency improvements you will need first to go beyond where you are, and then structure the pathway towards the replacement. I'll give you an example. Those are engineering methodologies, very, very normally applied. We redid an industrial plant. It is a process system. This company is manufacturing components for the construction industry, wooden components, flooring, etc. After less than 12 months, with the application of the digital twin, the productivity had increased 53%, 30% less time to delivery. That's what Mario Draghi says. If we do it, we increase the money available because you spend less. And for instance, 8% less of waste from the wooden material. Turn that into efficiency and resources, or the energy management. Clearly, when we say we cut 35%, and you know that we got green claims, so I wouldn't be saying that here at the COP with the Commission. We measure minus 35% in utilizing the processes for this building site. We are doing that only on efficiency, and this is product life cycle management and business process management. Of course, it is the first stage, but the potential is there. But you have to be very careful how you use it. In the Netherlands last year, the drought stopped the operation of some of the data centers of Microsoft. Water is clear.
Thank you very much, Arvea, for that. I think your point on the way that we should rethink our capital as natural capital of resources, and how we should think about how efficiently to utilize that to meet the goals that we have, rather than just thinking about the investment across the board. I think it's an essential point. Absolutely. And talking about efficiency, but I also want to talk about effectiveness, Nina, and I'm looking at you now. You mentioned already that you are specifically looking into new ways of engaging people with disabilities, or looking into gender and other type of social inclusions. We have this trajectory, we have these visions. How can we, with efficacy, make sure that these communities are as well integrated in the process as any other of the stakeholders that we are taking into consideration?
Thank you so much. Well, I'll start first with a little bit broader comments from the Climate Fund's perspective, before moving into my area of social inclusion. For the Climate Funds, and like listening and reflecting on what colleagues were saying, I think one of the important aspects of the work that we do is really bringing very different stakeholders, because to address all those challenges, and we know that transitioning to climate smart, resilient and inclusive infrastructure would require very high upfront costs, and it would deter private sector investors. Public resources are very limited and not available. So how to start creating systems and enabling environment and policy environments that would incentivize those reforms and those transitions, and also start de-risking investments for the private sector. And this is what we do with the climate investment funds through the MDBs. We work both with the public and private sector, and we really try to bring them together and help with that complementarity, and also work on the kind of governance reforms on regulations and policies, because without them the actual investments are not going to flow as quickly as needed for decarbonization. Within that, I think processes are very important, and building mechanisms, consultation mechanisms. If we're thinking of cities, and there are lots of best practices on that, of building citizen assemblies, advisory councils, and working within those mechanisms, again, with very specific groups. Youth is one of the groups that has a voice, has a lot at stake, and often can come up with solutions that will help you throw away the box and look really into some really innovative ideas. Also, when you were talking about, I had this one reflection. You were talking about the counterintuitive thought about data. You know, we like, especially in development context, we like to talk about need more data, disaggregated data, but in reality there is too much. And I think that also makes us think about, like, generally our society and consumption practices, and starting to work on the behavior change communication. If we're thinking about the people, it's yes, engaging people and seeing how cities can become more inclusive and useful for them, but also starting to think, like, what do we want? Do we want strawberries during winter, or do we rather get the homegrown tomatoes, which were also then grown in such a way that helps the environment, and we wait until summer arrives to enjoy strawberries as something that would bring us memories of summer. So I think the idea of, you know, combining this kind of policy and investments, but also with the softer side of behavior change communications, engaging with the companies, but also with the citizens in how they live in those cities, and conducting dialogues, not just to listen, but also to start shaping the vision and creating, you know, stronger green spaces, using technologies to help identify opportunities within the cities for spaces like this. So coming to more closely to disability inclusion, and I think this is the subject, especially here at the COP, not very loudly made. I've actually made it my mission over the last 2 years to start making a lot of noise about disability inclusion in climate finance, because it kind of was almost completely absent. Tomorrow we have a consultation with organizations of persons with disabilities on how those issues need to be reflected in the broader climate finance considerations, but specifically, and this was my interest in this session, we also just finalized a guidance note on climate smart and inclusive cities. So what needs to be done from the consultation process to when we start looking about the job creation. So what are the types of jobs? And I think with digital, it's kind of a two-sided sword, and as you've mentioned, you know, in broader context, it could be both an opportunity and a threat. For inclusion, it could also be an opportunity and a threat. We know that generally for labor market participation, COVID and the increasing work from home opportunities for many people with mobility limitations, that created more opportunities for them to be engaged in the labor market, and it's really great. At the same time, we have to be mindful that access to technologies and the way that the technologies are designed could also include large segments of the population, and without, you know, working through user-centered design, we will be excluding more people than we're including through that. On kind of planning, and, you know, if we're now thinking about bringing in green materials for construction and designing more green buildings, etc. In those processes, thinking about accessibility and thinking about it early enough. One of the problems with accessibility and inclusion considerations is very often they're thought as kind of as an afterthought, and then the expenses are quite significant, and the conversation usually about accessibility becomes around the expenses. But if it's integrated from the very beginning, it does not necessarily mean extra cost. In fact, through some consultative process, some solutions can be identified that would allow in cost savings. And I think thinking about that and thinking that the universal design standards are not just for persons with disabilities. I was doing a lot of research on disability inclusion while I was pregnant and traveling as a pregnant woman for work and realizing, oh my God, well, the airports, international airports are not that accessible. I cannot carry my suitcase because I'm not allowed to lift anything, but there is no way I can get to the lounge. So and then, you know, when you're with a stroller, it's the same barriers that you face in trying to get on the bus. So I think also, you know, when we think about disability inclusion, realizing it's not just for one group, it's kind of really large, and there are lots of intersectionalities. With disabilities, realizing that we are living in societies that are aging more rapidly, the percentage of persons with various forms of disabilities or health limitations is expecting to grow. So when we're building the cities, we really need to make them accessible for all, and I think call for action would be really like doing the audits, accessibility audits of any new ideas, new investments, and doing that in a participatory way. So bringing those who you want to benefit from that, and also within the green jobs, thinking specifically about this agenda as well.
Thank you very much. We are almost at time, and I know Arvea has to leave us. So before you run off, Arvea, one top challenge and one top opportunity that you see.
Jobs.
Jobs.
We need, even for strategic autonomy, we need qualified people that we don't have. Chinese have 77,000 PhD starting 2015 in STEM. The US 44,000, Europe is lower. When I look for people with the right, it's not only STEM people but also technicians, I don't find them. We need to train them.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mauricio. What is your one top challenge, one top opportunity?
I think one of the top challenge would be privacy, and what kind of data are we producing, and who owns that data, and who has access to that. However, an opportunity that could tackle not only that issue, but another one or other ones is like to find ways to make these digitalization participatory. You know, bring people to the design of the solutions. Of course, that can slow things down, but however, it can make more democratic solutions that can be suitable for all.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Nina.
Thank you so much. Well, I think on challenge, it's, you know, when you engage in really technical subjects, it's very often difficult to make the case for inclusion, for focus on people. It's like, okay, well, I know it's important, but it's not relevant, but it is to the design. And I think in terms of opportunity, the digital technologies do bring opportunities for the types of jobs that before, you know, pregnant women or persons with disabilities or other excluded groups were not able to engage in. They really bring those opportunities, but they will not be unlocked without targeted measures to bring them into those opportunities and into those new green jobs. So it has to be targeted.
Thank you very much. So what I hear today is that we do need lean. I think that was the first thing that we said, lean, but also mean, because we have a big challenge here that we are trying to tackle by helping our cities to become net zero resilient and inclusive solutions. But they need to be place-based so that we never forget that a solution is supposed to resolve a specific project, a problem, a specific challenge. They need to be affordable so that we are able to ensure that everyone can benefit from them, and they need to be inclusive. Otherwise, they are not going to be doing the job that we need them to do. Digitalization can help us in finding these solutions, but we need to continue thinking outside of the box and trying to see how that can be integrated as a holistic approach in the vision that we have for our cities of the future. A big round of applause for these wonderful panelists. Thank you very much. And also to the audience for participating, of course, in our conversation. So thank you very much, everyone.